The final thing really of note through the Grand Prix was a funny moment between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Not really funny ha-ha, but funny what on earth is going on. Here we go with Fernando coming out of the pits, and he was already struggling with straight line speed, and so he's trying to play games here with the DRS line. He's already looking in his mirrors, seeing where Hamilton is. He's been warned about the Mercedes driver coming through on pit exit, and what he does is he tries to let Lewis through so that he has the DRS on the long straight to turn 6 and can keep the place. But I don't love this from Fernando, and I don't like the idea of these DRS games, particularly on a long straight, with this flat out section through turns 2 and 3. Speeds are very high, up towards 180 miles per hour at this point, and Fernando just starts tapping the brakes, slowing down, and as a rival you're not expecting that. In fact, Fernando tries to do it cleverly. He tries to get so far off the road on the outside that he's not actually going to be causing an incident. He's going to be trying to do it in as safe a way as he possibly can. So he's almost actually gone over track limits as he's trying to hit the brakes, and he's looking in the mirrors and checking where Lewis is. And Lewis sits in behind and gets on the radio complaining of a brake test.
Yeah, he just brake tested me. I got brake tested like right before the brake is on.
That is effectively what it was, all with a tactical move to try and let Hamilton through. In the end, Lewis backs off, and Fernando has the lack of DRS at this point. Lewis comes through, and Fernando will take the place on the next straight again, and will eventually keep the place against the Mercedes. And this is what the data looks like. It really does prove that it's a brake test from Fernando, not with the desire to try and really put the jitters on Hamilton. He's actually trying to just get out the way of the Mercedes, but you can see this is Fernando in the red coming out of the pits against Fernando in the blue coming out of the pits earlier on in the Grand Prix. So we've got an outlap compared to an outlap, and at this point here you can see he starts playing games. So the blue line continues full throttle. He's just accelerating as you normally would up towards turn 5. The red line, you can see just a couple of hits of the brakes there as he's blending onto the brakes, squeezing on the throttle, back onto the brakes, going again. And the problem is the drivers behind, they're just not expecting this to happen. So at high speeds, tucked in behind in a slipstream, it's a tricky one, and that's why it's not a good look. It could be the catalyst for quite a big collision at some point. I don't think it's a particularly nice bit of driving that we want to see too often. But also from Lewis, actually, when you look at it again, he is not blameless in this as well. So at first he's in the slipstream. Now he has a chance to go around Fernando. You can already see he's turning to the left, thinks about just moving to that load of space to the inside and just take the place. But he chooses not to, and he chooses to play the game that Fernando's playing, backing off and just sitting behind. And once again, if this was a car slowing with an engine problem, it would look ridiculous that Lewis isn't trying to take the place, but he's just trying to tuck in and follow. So he's taking the bait really of Fernando and making it more of a situation than it probably needed to be. He's of course doing the smart thing because he wants the DRS, and he went on to take the place on the next lap. But it sort of mitigates the danger when Lewis is on the radio saying he's being brake tested, but then he's just trying to sit right in behind the Aston Martin as well, when there's all this space to come round and take the place if he wanted to. So the stewards looked at it and they did clear Fernando of any wrongdoing. You can sort of understand why Lewis makes the situation a little bit worse than it probably needed to be by sitting right in behind the Aston Martin. It's just not a situation we really want to see too much going forward because there is a slight danger risk with it. But we have seen it plenty of times in the past. Let's rewind 10 years, a full decade, where we find in Montreal a younger but still experienced and wily Lewis Hamilton against a very wily Fernando Alonso. And they're coming through turn 6 in Montreal, fighting it out for position. And let's have a look at what happens when they get into the next corner there, with the long straight in Montreal coming up. Hamilton in the Mercedes, Alonso in the Ferrari, and there's a DRS detection point coming up just at the end of this. Hamilton's starting to feel like he's going to get gobbled up by the Ferrari, and he tries to play the same game. Backs off there, Alonso comes alongside, and then once again, they're just a little break from Hamilton. Alonso's to the side of him, so in effect, it's a little bit of a better move there for Fernando to go alongside, so it's not quite as dangerous. But that is exactly the same thing as we saw in Abu Dhabi from 10 years ago in Montreal. And you can see it even more clearly on board with Fernando back in the day. He tries to get on the gas, there goes the hesitation from Hamilton, and there goes the brake from Hamilton. It is a very similar thing. And on this occasion, Fernando picks up the DRS and doesn't make it past on the way out of this hairpin, but there's another stab at DRS after the final corner, and he does make it past the Mercedes into the first corner. So Alonso comes out on top, and these two have been doing this for a decade. The reason that you don't like to see it is because we had the more famous example of this in Jeddah 2021, again involving Hamilton, this time Verstappen, they're fighting for the title. And this is more similar to what we had in Abu Dhabi, where Hamilton is in the wheel tracks of Verstappen, whereas Alonso started pulling out to the side, making it slightly safer. He could see a little bit more and wasn't prone to hitting the back of the Red Bull driver in this case, or the Aston Martin in Abu Dhabi. Of course, that's got its own danger when you're blocking two roads of a high-speed section of circuit. Hamilton backing off, sitting behind Verstappen, and then there's the contact. And that's what we don't want to see with these DRS games. So maybe something for the FIA to look into moving forward.